On this episode of the Finding Strength podcast, we had an old neighbor of ours.
Sergeant Major Clint Markland. Sergeant Major.
I know,
dude,
he's amazing.
He's a big deal.
He is a big deal.
Yeah.
I don't think I realized how big of a deal he was until this podcast, though.
Yeah. I always knew. I didn't know he was that big of a deal, but Clint is just a big deal guy. You meet Clint and you're like, whoa, this guy's got some knowledge. He's smart. He's sharp. He wakes up at 3:30 in the morning every day. Excuse me, 3:27 every day. This guy's amazing.
He is amazing. And his story is powerful. And to hear about him talk about how he puts himself in, what did he use? Not stress. What did he say that he would? Suffering. He'd put himself in suffering. Yeah. And it made me think of the eustress.
Yes.
He's putting himself in eustress, but he calls it suffering. So when he does go through a traumatic event or something that wasn't planned by him, he's already prepared for what it feels like to suffer.
Yeah. Well, and another cool fun fact, Clint and I have the same favorite book.
I know. When he said that, I was like, oh my, I like these two. They hit it off so well in the podcast. They had a lot of similar things that you guys both love. But yeah, the book,
they'll find out. Yeah. You're going to have to listen to the episode to learn.
I can't tell.
That's your little teaser.
All right. It's a good book.
Tells
Everyone
about
should read it.
he comes back from this tragic accident, tells about his deployment, and there's lots of good stuff in this episode. We hope you enjoy. Finding Strength podcast. We're back.
We're back. Here we are.
Back in the studio.
I know. I love it.
I know. It's weird. It's kind of cool. It's fun, huh?
I know. We don't have to set it up.
We don't have to set it up. There's cameras all over the place, which is cool and really different. We got an awesome guest today. Our friend and neighbor, the one and only Clint Markland.
Yeah, former neighbor. You guys.
I know.
Former neighbor.
It makes me sad when we say that.
We left.
We did.
Clint's a rad guy. He's a veteran. Well, I guess active duty, right?
Yeah, still kicking.
You're doing your thing, man. That's great. We're gonna get to Clint in a sec, but I want to recap last week's episode for new listeners, and so everybody can kind of go back and check that out. Last week we had on Josh and Jordan, which is an awesome conversation. Actually, like the day that it came out, the very next day, we went to a conference, first responder conference, and Josh spoke that day too. It was really cool to kind of hear him talk about his super awesome wellness program that he's created for his department and how they're trying to change the way that they do first responder care and stuff like that. It was really, really interesting.
It was really interesting. So if you're like a police officer, police chief, or any first responder, and you're looking at trying to figure out how to get help for your department, it's a great one to listen to. Yeah. And Jordan shares his story, which is so captivating. Like, I want to know more about him. He gives a lot. But he also shares his personal information. So if you need help, you can contact him personally.
Oh, and Jordan has more stories than any guy I've ever met. He's a recovering addict. This guy is crazy, Clint. Like, I wish you could meet him. He's
a good dude.
He was talking, I mean, the coolest thing he talked about, I don't know if it's coolest, but it was pun intended, right? He was talking about how they would get really high and they like built an igloo and they like had sex in an igloo and then they come out of the igloo and there's this Boy Scout troop there.
They're in like the middle of a park and like, crazy.
I love it. But anyway, that's awesome. But let's get to you, man. How are you, dude?
I'm really on cloud nine. Like,
living the freaking dream over here.
I probably never felt better in my life. I feel like I'm buzzing at a high frequency all the time.
That's awesome.
Things are just great.
Share the knowledge, man. How are you doing this? What is the trick? What is the secret?
Well, I mean, everybody knows like it's mind, body, spirit connection. That's really it. If you can get mentally aligned with your food, your nutrition, your body, then you can kind of really open up the spirit and you just buzz and you meet people that buzz all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
It's like contagious, right?
Yes.
You're like attracted to each other and you run into each other at the store. Like you
guys did the other day. I know. Yeah. We just ran into each other yesterday. No, was it yesterday?
We've ran into each other like every week for the last 3 weeks.
I know. I'm like, all right, I got to call Clint. He's got to come on this podcast.
It's really cool.
But before we jump into what you're doing now, I want to know, where are you from? How many members in your family, and where do you line up in that?
So little known fact about me is I was actually born in New York City.
Oh,
So even though out here in Utah, I was born in New York City, I lived there for 6 or 7 months of my life.
okay.
That's it.
And
then we moved
Utah.
to Nephi, Utah.
Nephi. Yeah,
Nephi,
buddy.
okay.
Yeah, I got 3 brothers, and the joke is on paper, I'm the least successful of my brothers. They are all high performing, incredible individuals, and that's 100% due to the efforts of my parents, my mother and father. My mother was an entrepreneur who was brilliant. I mean, brilliant. Missed one question on the ACT.
That's
pretty much had her associate's degree done in high school, and this is in the 70s.
Wow.
Wow.
So just an incredible woman. And then my dad was a PA, graduate degrees, just an outstanding father, always present, always there, incredibly patient. So any success I have or my brothers have is 100% on my parents. We were very, very fortunate the way we grew up.
That's really
cool.
cool.
So are you the baby?
No, I am middle.
Okay, so you're
I'm
the
the
middle.
third. I'm the third child. I
Okay.
have 2 older brothers, 1 younger brother.
And you one younger brother. So all boys.
All boys. Yeah.
Wow, yeah. All boy mom.
Yeah. Good for her, huh?
Heck yeah. That's amazing.
And I'm sure we were easy. I'm sure
Yeah.
we were easy children, very polite, very, very well mannered.
4 boys.
Yeah, that sounds like bullcrap. I don't think.
I bet you guys broke a lot of things. That's what I think.
I've
of.
met your kids, and I know that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Just kidding. You
Yeah.
have awesome kids. Your kids are rad. We love our little Liam, who you guys have heard on the podcast before. The cold episode, Liam did that one. One of Liam's best friends is Parker, and that's Clint's
Yeah.
kid. And
Yeah.
they were 2
He's
little
the
peas in a
cutest
pod.
kid ever.
Man.
I love him. He
He's-
has such high energy too.
That
He's,
kid.
yeah, he can go. I love it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. And
Yeah.
then so you have So your kids are Parker, and Benson.
We have Parker Benson, and then our youngest baby boy, who is our dream child, is Hayes. And
Hayes, that's right. Hayes,
He's
yeah.
the cutest freaking kid
He is so
ever,
cute.
man. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So so you grew up in Nephi. How long did you live in Nephi?
Really, I mean, all of my years.
So that's where you lived.
Yeah,
that's where
went
you
to
grew
high
up.
school,
Okay.
everything there. Then graduated high school and moved to the big city of Provo, Utah, for a while.
Okay.
Big city.
And that's I joined the military right in high school. So I was 17
Okay.
years old and joined the military right out of high school. And I've always kind of just done that. Eventually, my folks moved away from Nephi. All my brothers moved away from Nephi. And we really have no connection to that rural town anymore, but it's a great place.
Okay. And what made you decide to join the military?
I don't 100% know.
Okay.
I think I always wanted to. Because I remember as a child, I always dressed up in military stuff. I thought it was cool. I thought G.I. Joe was great. I didn't have a need for college money because I really think my parents would have paid for it if I asked enough. And I didn't know if I wanted to go to college. So I don't know. I don't know if it was a calling or what. I'm very, very thankful.
Okay.
Right out of high school, I had a group of friends and some went left and some went right. And I may have joined the wrong group of friends if I hadn't have been in the military, had that sort of rigid structure. So I wish I could say it was one thing. I love the idea of service, but I always think I wanted to be in the Army. I really, really did.
That's cool.
Why the Army and not any of the other branches? Is
I
it just more attractive, or did you just kind of fall into it?
So no, I mean, I talked to a Marine Corps recruiter, and I thought what they did was cool. I didn't really understand the other branches. I guess I always and I remember having visions of me wearing camouflage to elementary school, thinking
Nice.
like I would look like Sergeant Slaughter from G.I. Joe, and
G.I.
how
Joe,
cool that was to be a soldier, and that image always sticks with me.
Being a child of the 80s, man, like G.I. Joe, that was the shit when
That's
we were
true.
kids, dude.
Yeah,
That was so cool. I love Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles was my thing.
same.
Ninja Turtles, G.I. Joe's, Ghostbusters was really cool. He-Man, dude, freaking He-Man.
Yeah,
Oh,
100%.
those were that was where it was.
Just
at
think
when
of
we were
like
kids.
that stretchy Armstrong.
Oh, Stretch
dude.
Armstrong.
Stretch
Like,
Armstrong,
is
which
that-
wasn't
was
as
that
cool
a
as
thing?
everybody thinks. It's
Definitely not as
nostalgic,
cool.
but
Definitely
yeah,
not as
definitely not
cool.
as cool.
That's all I know about the 80s. You guys are old.
Yeah, we had some good time in the 80s. Sugary cereal and G.I. Joes, man. That's
Mhm.
like
Yeah,
that's
that was
our
great.
childhood right there. Lead to a life of obesity and disappointment. I'm just
Yes.
kidding.
Yeah. Yep.
It's
Yep.
a great recipe for your mental health counselor. Lots of job security over here.
Yes, it does.
Our generation, man, we're an interesting bunch. We're an interesting bunch. I feel like the millennial, because like we're like the elder millennial. Because you're what?
I would, depending on which scale you look,
Yeah.
I am a millennial, but
kinda
also
not.
would not. be a
Because you're how
millennial.
old are you?
I am 41.
41. So you're older than me. 82.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is like the very start of the millennial, like same thing, like the elder millennial kind of late Gen X deal. That whole weird generational gap is a strange thing, because it's like we're the kids that grew up with all that cool 80s stuff, but then also we're the kids that know all the internet stuff.
Yeah,
because we got that too.
There's the hybrid, which is the Xennials or Zennials
Xennials,
or something like
yeah.
that, and really the difference is growing up knowing how to use Google.
Yeah, all
Those
that,
those that actually started to use Google, there is a significant difference from those that are slightly older than us that kind of delayed use of Google. So Google in your formative years really, really mattered.
Because I mean, think about what the internet's done to human beings. Like, we're a completely different breed of humans than we were 20 years ago.
Yeah, and
30 years ago,
with AI now, I mean, a whole other level.
It is.
Yeah.
It's true.
Anyways, I know you keep going.
We're
We're nerding out here. I know.
She's the get to know you.
I'm letting you go.
She's the get to know you question here. Okay, continue. We want to know more about.
I want to get deep.
Go ahead.
So you joined the military at 18, and then how long? Like, because you've been in the military since you were 18 years old.
17.
17 years old.
Yeah, 23 years. Coming up on just about 24 years.
That's amazing.
So I mean, over half my life.
Yeah,
I've been serving. I've been doing this.
That is really cool. I did not know that, Clint. That's
Yeah.
cool. So how far into it and when you met your wife?
Oh, God, let me. So I was kind of lucky. I joined with my wife's brother.
Oh,
And he's been one of my best friends my entire life. And so he and I, we went to Iraq together. We did 2 deployments together, actually. One was a homeland defense tour, not as a cool story, but then he and I went to Iraq together. I came back and had started dating, my wife. And so it's kind of awkward. I was like, yeah, hey, I'm hanging out with your sister, battle buddy.
Thanks, buddy.
But yeah, so we knew each other in high school. We went on one date in high school. We went to Wendy's and got a Frosty. That was about it. And her brother chased us down. It's a funny story, but we didn't really start dating until like 13 years ago or so.
Okay.
So I'd been in the military for 10 plus years, done 2 deployments and everything.
And her brother was in it, so she kind of had a background of like what military was like.
Yeah, and having family in the military, especially brother, most women say, I will never date anybody in the military.
Really?
And my wife was the same way.
But you're just that special.
But I'm incredibly charming.
Yes, you are. So can you tell us about your time in Iraq? Can you give it like
how many deployments have you done?
So I've done 3 deployments.
Done 3.
One was a homeland defense tour, which is right at the beginning of the war, right when we were kind of building up our security around the homeland, and I deployed to Twilla, Utah, to guard the chemical depot. So it's
count it.
Yeah, I know. I count that too.
So 2007, 2008, deployed to Iraq, a place called Camp Bucca. And we were kind of detainee operations. So all the bad guys that got detained. We were glorified prison guards.
Oh my gosh, that's
you
so
will.
scary.
I mean, but it's eye to eye with the enemy all day. And there was stuff that happens. You get rocketed quite often and all of that stuff. And then my most recent deployment was 2018. And this was a great deployment for me. We were in Dubai, really, but I got to travel everywhere. I went to Iraq, to Kuwait, to Jordan, and to Oman for a bit, to Qatar for a bit, and there was a real world. I mean, the war on ISIS was happening, and we had the fire cell that controlled a lot of the strikes into Syria at the time, and then we had a cooperation mission where I got to travel the world and meet all these great people and talk about Army stuff and everything. It was a great mission.
That's really cool. How did you stumble into that role?
I was very, very fortunate. Luckily, I've done a lot in the military, and at that point, at the rank I was at, and my skill set. And I don't want to sound pompous at all, but I could punch I could punch my own ticket. I really could do anything I wanted.
That's rad.
And there were some great opportunity to teach countries about what it means to be a soldier, how to be a non-commissioned officer, like the values of our Army, the lessons learned, the way we train, and I wanted to do that, and so I stepped into that role. But then I also have a skill set on the fires side, which I mean shooting rockets side, and when I wanted to do that, I could bounce into the operations center and do that. So I really was probably in the luckiest role where I could just about do any job that I wanted.
That's cool. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was
that's
very,
crazy,
very
huh?
rewarding. Very rewarding.
And I remember when you deployed.
Mhm.
We lived by you guys then.
Yeah.
We did. That's
Yep.
right. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, we did. I remember you being
Yeah,
gone.
Candace was super lonely.
I
Poor thing. Well, that's the plight of the military wife. Like much like the first responder wife
Yeah.
thing. Like we went to this cool Stronger Families retreat not too long ago, and we got to see these women who are kind of like in the background all the time.
Yeah.
Like supporting these incredible men who are going out and putting their lives on the line regularly. Man, is that's a whole nother gig, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
And our neighborhood is amazing. They
Yeah.
totally stepped in and like I think the Miles mowed your lawn every
They
like,
wouldn't let. So
day
there
or
was a
so-
sign up
yeah.
sheet for my lawn, and he
Yes.
wouldn't let anybody do it but him because he knew the way I liked it.
Yes.
And I'm a
Oh,
bit.
because your lawn is like the most
It is
bit of a
so
lawn nerd.
pristine.
immaculate freaking thing, dude.
It really is. They have the nicest yard.
Oh yeah.
But my wife really has done such amazing things. I mean, she's an entrepreneur, she's a nurse, and she's raised all these kids largely while I've been away. I remember when I got home and I was doing the math on our second child, and I had missed over half of his life, either traveling for the military, going to schools, doing exercises. I was gone. He was right around 3 at the time, and I had missed 2 years cumulatively of my 3-year-old's life.
What's that like for you, man? Like that's got like because I know you're a good dad. I've
Yeah.
seen you with your kids. You're a good dude. We
I
relate on
appreciate
that.
that.
You are, man, and
Yeah.
you have
Hands-on.
you're a good
Yeah.
human being, right? And so there's guys that just don't give a shit about their kids and just kind of bail on them. You're not that guy. So to be that guy who loves his kids and is a good father and wants to be involved, but gets pulled away, like does that weigh on you?
I'm finding it tougher now.
How so?
I feel I don't want to say regret. Regret's not the word, but I feel like I put the burden of sacrifice on people that didn't ask for it. And there is an unfortunate thing that if you marry somebody in the military, you sign up as well.
Right.
And so my wife signed up, but my kids didn't really sign up. They were kind of born into it. And it's all they've ever known. And so I do feel some level of regret. Not that I would choose it differently, because I don't think I would. And I think there has to be people in the world, like even the first responder community and everything like that. Like there has to be people in the world that are willing to take on that trauma and the burden for the rest of us. And I'm not saying I'm like taking on trauma or I'm doing heroic things or anything like that.
Well,
but
I mean, you might not say that, but the reality is that's what you do.
Yep.
That's as I've worked for years with you guys, right? We're just going to use this giant label of men and women who sacrifice their lives for our betterment, right? And that's a huge swath of people, not just military, not just first responders, but there's a lot of people that do that, right? Like freaking electric linemen that are up there freaking hanging by a thing and putting their lives online so that we can have better lives. Like that's really noble. And the word hero is not something that anybody likes to use, and it maybe gets overused or whatever. But maybe it's not hero label, but it's heroic, it's noble, it's honorable, and I think that is something that really gets downplayed because most of the guy, and I'll speak to you directly, like you're just a humble guy, like you don't see yourself as noble or all these things, but I think it's valuable to self-evaluate, even for the listeners out there, self-evaluate and kind of look in the mirror and be like, dude, I'm freaking kind of a badass. Like, that's cool that I do this. And understanding that, like, that makes me who I am is important. And also what's I've done to make me who I am matters. And the sacrifices that I make matter. And the sacrifices that my children, even though they didn't sign up, my wife, even though she may or may not have signed up, made, they matter and they make the world a better place. And I think what that does is it gives this meaning to the work, the nobility work that I'm doing, rather than making it this arduous task this burden that I carry around, where I have all this responsibility, that I feel bad or, remorseful that I put this on these people. I think we can kind of like mitigate that a little bit by just being really honest with ourselves. Like what you do, Clint, is incredible. And the sacrifice that your family has to make, as shitty as this is, it's necessary. Like we have to have men and women who do this.
It's also incredible what they do too, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like they are also in that category. Like Candace and the kids and taking care of them while you're gone and out.
Well, so
on
I
deployment.
did the math on it once, and I didn't realize this when I was out at my last deployment. It was Veterans Day, and I'm not a big birthday person, but I always felt Veterans Day was a holiday that I could enjoy over Father's Day or anything. And it wasn't about going and getting a donut. It wasn't anything like that.
Because you've earned it.
It was just uniquely
Yeah.
ours. Everybody has a birthday. All fathers get Father's Day, but Veterans Day, for some reason, it felt uniquely mine.
That's cool.
That's cool.
And I did the math on it, and you think 1% of the population deploys, and only 52% of those people are married, and so 52% of 1% was a 0.48%, something like that, of the American population are military spouses that are home by themselves while kids are deployed, or while their husbands or wives are deployed, and so they are in such an elite status.
Wow.
Because 1% of us know the burden, but only 0.52 or 0.48% of Americans know the burden of what it's like to be a military spouse. That my time on deployment, there is some time of excitement, but most of it's pretty regimented. I knew when I was waking up, I knew what I was eating. I knew every single thing I was going to do every single day. And then you'd have these moments of action, and then you just go back to routine. My wife, on the other hand, running businesses, being a nurse, running kids, soccer game comes up, nobody to watch the other child. Like, I can tell you my schedule every single day I was deployed. She couldn't tell you what her schedule was going to be in an hour.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
And you just have to worry about you and the guys you're dealing with, right? But these moms, they worry about themselves and their kids, and
and then the stress of your husband gone.
Yeah.
In danger in some
in the
cases.
back of her mind the whole time, going like, "Oh, I hope he's okay."
Yeah.
That's gotta be brutal.
So walk around in my wife's brain, and then you'll see resilience and strength.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And I see that.
Candace
in
is incredible.
She is incredible. I
Yeah,
love her. She,
all these military wives, man, like they deserve tons and tons and tons of credit.
yeah.
They really
They do. They need
And
recognition.
they're just in the background, just plugging away, man, not asking for much.
No.
Yeah. Finding Strength podcast is sponsored by Avantacool.
Bontacool.
Yeah, cold plunges. Who's surprised? We got a cold plunge sponsor. Yeah. I met Jeff Rempfer at a first responder conference not too long ago. He and his brother Dave are the owners, and Jeff's a first responder guy. They are killing it. They're this amazing cold plunges. We just got one put in at our house. How do you like it?
I love it, actually. I mean, it's,
Game changer, huh?
it is a game changer, especially from coming from a horse trough?
Horse trough.
That's what we've been using.
It worked.
Hey,
It was
it
good.
did. It worked. It was great. I love it.
But it
But I
doesn't
love
have a UV filter, freaking regular filter. This thing has a hot tub filter.
Yeah, it goes hot and cold. It's amazing.
It goes to 104 degrees and then all the way down to
45 degrees.
30s.
Yeah.
Into the high 30s is what they'll do.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy good stuff. We
Which
love it.
You don't need to go that low to get the
Well,
benefits.
Yeah, low 40s is actually really what you need.
That's my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah. 45 degrees, 3 minutes, and then get me out.
And then get you out. Yeah, we love it. But the main things that our sponsor wants us to highlight is that it's got an all aluminum frame. It's light, easy to move around. We put it up on our deck.
Yeah.
We're able to get it up the stairs and stuff like that.
Installing it was the easiest thing. Like that was the easiest part, was installing it. I was surprised we took it up a flight of stairs onto our deck, and it was not that hard.
Yeah.
I was surprised how light it was.
Right.
And then even like filling it up. How was that for you?
Super easy.
Yeah.
Really easy to use. I absolutely love this thing. It's got this huge pump in it, so it gets cold really quick and it can heat up really quick as well. And the best part, most hot tubs use like a 220 cable. You have to direct line in.
Oh, yeah.
This thing uses 110. You just plug it into your regular friggin' outlet,
Yep.
and you're ready to go. Another amazing benefit: if you use the code Strength24, you will get 25% off.
25% off.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Amazing. They're
Yep.
hooking us up. They really love the cause. We love them. We couldn't be more grateful to these guys for sponsoring the show. So if you need a cold plunge, Avanticool. That is AVANTIKUL.com.
Avanticool. So did you ever experience like PTSD or anything from being deployed out, or
so
how was it for you to adjust when you came back?
So it's tough to say yes and no. A deployment is a thumbprint, right? It's a little different for every single person.
What do you mean by that, thumbprint?
So if you look at my thumb and your thumb,
Yeah.
they're different,
Okay.
right? Different. Yeah. So everybody that goes on a deployment, whether it's the exact same deployment or not, everybody's experience is going to be a little bit different.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's a cool analogy.
That really is cool. Yeah, I didn't know that.
And so if you think about it in terms like that, me and somebody there could have seen the exact same thing, and that person come home completely broken.
Mm-hmm.
And then I come home for the most part fine. But and status or stats and data kind of point to this. Is I came home to a very loving family, a non-broken home. I came back to a tribe. If you read Younger's book Tribe, which is fantastic on PTSD, and so I can't say I don't have anything, because I know I've got stuff, but some of the things that got me is, after being in a heightened level of awareness for a long period of time, you come home a little edgy. I remember I came home and just getting after people for not standing in a line and things like that. So you come back definitely different. One of the things that got me more than terror and trauma and all that stuff is something that is called like moral injury.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Please talk about that, because that's not something that's talked about a lot, and it's really important. Yeah. Whatever your
Can you
understanding
explain
is.
what that is?
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
So without getting into the details, is you do things on a deployment, or you're involved in doing things, or you train people to do things, people that you really, really care about, and you put them in a situation where they have to do things, right?
Yeah.
Things. What do you mean things? Welcome to therapy land, where I get a press.
No, I mean the traumas.
Be more clear.
The traumas of war. So there's.
You're doing shitty stuff. You're doing horrible, awful things. You're doing
that
things
morally you normally wouldn't do at home. Okay.
You're being faced with wrestling with the idea of, am I going to be alive, or am I going to take this other guy's life? Like, that's not something that a human being's brain is really trained to deal with until you have to deal with it. And then it becomes a very real thing that you never, ever get to stop dealing with. Yeah. It's a big deal.
Yeah. So I one of the things that hurt me is there was about nine kids that I just love, these dudes and gals. I
love that you call them kids.
Well,
it's reality.
I've known them my entire life. I've met their parents. They got in the military underneath me, and I have seen them through their entire career.
Yes, yeah.
And then we deploy together, and I've got to send a chunk of them to Syria, where it's a lot. It was real, very, very real at the time.
Yeah.
And so I've got these people that I care about dearly that are in the hairiest of situations and fighting for their lives, and like manning borders in order to make sure that they are not overran. Okay.
And something could happen to them. Like one of them could not come back.
100%. But I also know what they're doing up there. And in some case they are engaged.
thing up, your face flushed.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
No,
Yeah.
but this is what we're trying to normalize these symptoms for people. It's really important to recognize that like your body's just going to do stuff all the time without your permission. That's its job. And so Pat Benatar comes on and the body does its thing without your permission. Why? Because it's protective. Nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment that I go, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me because my body's doing this thing, that's the biggest problem with post-traumatic stress disorder, right? That's the biggest problem with trauma in general, is my stigmatization, my judgment, my really this, what we call an antagonistic relationship that I've created with my body. My body's just doing what it's supposed to do. And my job is to recognize that, become more aware of how often my body is doing that, and then adjust, recalibrate. And that's what having a stable childhood, having a supportive mother, having a supportive wife, having a family life that is free of a lot of financial stress. It's much simpler to be able to recognize, become aware, and recalibrate and readjust than for somebody who's coming back from deployment, who grew up in an environment of chaos, who didn't have a dad around, or who was abused, or who had to join the military out of necessity, not out of choice, because there was no other options, and that's just what you do. Or somebody who comes home and wife is left and the kids are gone and wholly awful things happen. And on top of that, you're wrestling in your brain with the moral injury thing, which is basically this, you may have heard of this term called cognitive dissonance, where there's this thing that I'm feeling in my head and thinking, and it's just like, this isn't right, yet I kind of have to do it anyways. Like, how does that go together? And that is such a giant wrestle for the brain. And what it does neurologically is it creates these neural pathways where I'm in this repeat kind of zone where I end up having to wrestle with that same conflicting thinking pattern over and over and over. And every time I'm triggered and reminded of that conflicting thing, that injury that I have to my moral self, it's the same trigger. I get the physiological response, I get the mental response, I get the stigma, the judgment, the shame, and that is extremely complex for people to deal with. And it's not something, straight up for our listeners out there, it is not something that we can just do alone. This has been very, very well researched. Many men and women try to just like isolate themselves and kind of like hope they can think their way out of this. It's something that has to be kind of contextualized and understood and talked about with other people who are going through the same thing, so that you can go like, oh, so I'm not weird for having this thing happen to me. That's normal. Like, this is how the body's supposed to respond. That is really, really important for people with this. And the moral injury term is kind of a newer thing. Yeah. It's pretty hot right now, actually, in the therapy world. It comes up all the time. I've actually had a couple speakers come talk to me and be like, hey, we're trying to do more research on moral injury. Like, do you know anything about it? And so it's kind of in its infancy. I'm sure you've read about it. There's probably books about it. I'm not super aware, but has that been kind of your experience more or less and what you've seen?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's a thumbprint.
Yeah.
You know, it's
different
very,
Very different for
different.
everyone, yeah.
And so for me, I likened what I got through with a little bit of PTSD, but more, like you said, cognitive dissonance. Like, I know I'm supposed to act a certain way. However, in this situation, I did not.
Yeah.
Which is 100% against my values.
Your moral
compass,
values, and moral injury.
And so I've kind of been lucky because I'm very self-aware. I'm a journaling nerd. And so I kind of do a little self CBT where I journal when I'm having these triggers or these thoughts or reliving these moments. I will journal, and I journal my CBT, my PTSD, my moral injury journal is actually in a different color. And so I will write everything down normally in the same color. However, when I'm in this mode, I write in a different color. And
do you have a reason why you do that?
Yeah, it's because in a way, I consider my journals a roadmap to success for my children, and it has everything that I've done over the last who knows however long I've been journaling, and I want to ensure that they know that there's a distinct difference from the person that is writing this than the person that writes the majority of my journals. And this is an exercise, not who I am.
Help me understand that. What do you mean?
So I think from a CBT type of perspective, I am more outside of myself, asking myself questions, right? Okay, you're thinking this. Why are you thinking this? All right, let's do this. And kind of
When you're in the other color.
yeah, when I'm in the other color. So I kind of put myself in a coaching type role.
Interesting.
And be like, okay, let's ask more questions about this and just get this out. Or let's free write about this and just kind of get this out a little bit.
It's almost like you are asking a part of you how it sees this rather than how you see it.
Yeah, I'm trying to deep dive into myself. Otherwise I'll just get stuck going through playing certain scenes over and over again. But
That
it's like
ruminative, loopy, thinky stuff. Yeah.
But if I write it and I ask myself questions about it, I can get to different conclusions, different answers, different ways forward, and all of that. And so, but I don't consider, not that it's not myself, but I consider that a different part of my normal journaling routine. And so it's separate, but it must be captured.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Yeah,
I like
I do a therapeutic modality called internal family systems. And in internal family systems, and it's actually rooted in like old school psychology, like Jungian stuff, even a little bit of like the Freudian, because Freud had this, the id, the ego, the super ego thing, right? Like kind of was take the psyche and break it down to like these little parts or whatever. And what internal family systems is, and we've talked about it on the podcast before. Actually, my first episode ever on Mason's podcast, we talked about IFS, internal family system stuff. But it's pretty interesting because you can kind of do what you've done where you have this idea of that there's this me thing that we call the self. That's who I really am, right? And I know when I show up and when I'm centered in my heart energy and love and compassion and caring and all this beautiful, wonderful, loving energy thing, when I'm there in that place, that's me operating from self. That could be likened to God or to this energetic, beautiful, wonderful space of being me, whole, if you will. And that part of us, the self, can actually question other parts of us that exists not as the self, but as parts of the mind or the psyche. And so kind of the exercise that you're doing is sort of kind of like a microcosm of that, where it's like this other military guy is answering back and the self is asking questions. And that obviously that's not the intent of it, but it's really kind of remarkable that you just figured that out on your own.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. And I think there's a lot more to self-healing, right, than we realize, because even though, like I said, you got to talk to people about it, what you're really doing is you're getting a reflection of the self back at you. And you're seeing that, like, I'm not alone. Most importantly, I'm okay. And finally, because I'm not alone and I'm okay, well, asking for help sometimes is okay too, because I don't need to always do this by myself. But in the end, the person who's actually doing the healing of me is always me. And I can find a whole bunch of different really cool ways to do that. And there's no one right way, thumbprint, right? There's no one right way to self-heal. And the fact that you've found that and it works for you so well is really, it's freaking cool, man.
Yeah, and I do mental health checkups. I do those things.
Yeah.
And
you have therapy stuff?
A little bit. And so once a year, I make sure I go and I actually post that. I send it out to every soldier that works with me and say, hey, today's my mental health checkup day. When is yours scheduled? So,
Love that.
That's cool.
And so most of it's preventative at this point.
Yeah.
But I make sure once a year I schedule it and I let people know that, hey, even as a senior leader in the military, it's okay. And I will do it every single year.
That's really
awesome.
cool.
What's your title?
Sergeant Major.
Sergeant Major.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah. So for your listeners, I'm sure it's really confusing. Just know I'm a big deal.
That's true. Sergeant Major is a big deal. Sergeant Major's not messing around. Yeah, that's super cool.
So when you leave on these deployments, like, do you have like a certain routine or something that you and your family do before you say, hey, goodbye? I'm leaving
Well,
for
I've
a
only
year"?
deployed with with the wife and kids
Yeah.
one time.
Oh, that's
It
right.
was
Okay.
almost twice. The other one, I mean, I was supposed to go to Afghanistan in 2012, and the mission got canceled a week and a half before I was going to leave. So we had a goodbye party. Everything, we'd said goodbye, bags were packed. It was everything.
It was happening.
And I came home and told my wife, I'm like, oh, April Fools.
Not going anymore. Best April Fools ever.
But some routine stuff, and this is stuff I teach soldiers all the time about deployments is as you're winding up for deployment, as you're getting ready to go, work on yourself and work on your relationships at home. Because a deployment will do one of two things. It will make a strong relationship much stronger, but it will make a weak relationship much weaker. So if you have 6 months before you go, that should be work. You should be spending that on your relationships and making sure they are strong before you step out the door.
Are there any like habits or tricks or tools or whatever that you've found that are really helpful for people to work on their relationships?
So 100%, and this is one of my philosophies is your family is the most important thing in the world, but to make them the most important, you have to put yourself first. What I mean by that is, and this is directed towards men, fathers, husbands, is you have to work on yourself every single day away from the family. So when your family needs you, you can show up a little bit better. Right.
Love that.
And so then you can really start to serve and dive into your relationship. Put those things in perspective and be working always on your relationship. We read Five Love Languages, which is a beautiful book.
Great Chapman. Great stuff.
And us doing things like that together that explored a little bit more and who we are. So we went to marriage seminars and those sort of stuff just to strengthen our bond.
Love it.
But before we went, we kind of made arrangements of communication and all of those things, what we would say, what we wouldn't say, because I'm sure my wife doesn't want to know everything that's going on. And really, even until that Pat Benatar stuff came up, I hadn't told her, everything. But, one thing is my wife and I have always had an incredibly strong relationship. And if we see trouble down the road, we will strengthen our relationship first and find something uniting so we can go through it together. And that's what most people need to do. And first responders have it probably so rough because it is an endless cycle of trauma and everything like that. And how do you not carry that stuff?
Know. Yeah, the thing that I hear that the spouses talk about all the time is like, I don't know who's coming in the door. I don't know who's going to be. And every day it could be somebody different. Because they have, the parts thing, going back to the parts, like there's 4 or 5 different parts who can show up at work, they can't show up at home, and those are the parts that are running the show when they're at work. So
yeah, and men really need to practice being uncomfortable all the time.
Yes,
and they need to, and that's why we go to the gym. We were saying leg day today. The squat rack is a metaphor for life. 100%. Like you will push yourself into failure. So when you have to be strong for your family, you will be strong. Yeah. And so if you haven't practiced being uncomfortable every single day, because there's going to be traumas that come in your family that are not expected, are not self-inflicted. And me and my wife have gone through that where there were things that we couldn't control. Your kids will get sick. Your parents will die. And if you are incapable of being uncomfortable in your daily life, when a real trauma comes up, you will crumble. And that's why you have to work on yourself every single day. So when that moment arrives, you are ready to go.
Boom.
That's really cool. I love that you guys did like stuff before you left. Like just like almost like you're preparing because it's going to be hard on the marriage and stuff like that.
And you do need to apologize.
Definitely.
Yes.
Oh,
To
Mhm.
and it says you're really responsible. You're not responsible for your children because they could grow up to be a-holes regardless, but you are responsible to your children.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And
That
if,
is
if,
beautiful.
if you want your kids to have good table manners, do family dinners.
Yeah. Simple.
That's a must in our house.
Simple. Easy peasy, man. Yeah. I love that.
So, what is it that you do for yourself so you can show up for your family?
So I have a super dorky, incredibly rigid routine. So I wake up every morning at 3:27.
Damn,
I-
3:27 a.m.
Yes,
That's
I
amazing.
take a cold shower because I can't afford a ice plunge. I take a cold shower. I read, and then I write 3 notes. I write, and I will write 4 once Hayes is a little bit older. But I write a note for my wife and 2 kids every single day. So when they wake up, the first thing they see is love. And so
Wow.
I start my day off with some sort of act of service. I do a little bit nutrition, and then I go to the gym. Before I go to the gym, I do Wim Hof breathing in the parking lot, and I read a little bit more. So I get to the gym about 5 to 10 minutes before it opens, so I can read in the parking lot. And then I work out. I do 2 different workouts. In between workout 1 and workout 2, I read.
Okay.
And then my workout 2 is usually like a cardio thing, and I take courses while I do cardio. So I'm trying to learn more. Then I get to work. The first hour of my workday is dedicated to myself, where I meditate, I journal, and then I read a different type of book. So I try to read spiritual stuff in the morning, and then at work I read my next book, which is usually a self-help thing. And then I plan my day, and I plan my day using the 10 and 30 rule. I spend 10 minutes a day planning my day, writing everything out. Always put my family stuff in there first. And I always tell people, like when they show me their calendar, if you don't have any of your family stuff on your calendar, I know exactly where your values are, and they're misguided. And so I
Ooh, say that again. I want to make sure everybody got that. Say that again.
yeah. So if I look at somebody's calendar and they do not have any of their family stuff on there, I can tell where their values are, and I believe that they are misguided.
That is
Wow,
so good.
that is cool. Yeah.
And so
That's very easy.
Yeah, that
I could
is
do
easy.
that in a
Yeah.
heartbeat.
It is, but so many people have Google calendars
Yes.
where you've got your podcast filming, you've got client meetings, you got this and this, but we leave out basketball games. We leave out practices. Even if they're routine and you know they're there, why aren't they stacked?
That's wonderful.
because everything
love
else you get planned
that.
around there because that's what your values are.
Yes.
Right. And so just little things like that, like your calendar all of a sudden becomes this vision board to success for your family. And so that's the way my calendar is designed.
That's really
and I connect it
Yeah.
to every value. I connect it to everything I have. I have 6 or 7 affirmations that I read in the morning. I have a mission statement that I read about once a week. And then I've got what's called self-talk, which is like in-depth affirmation. So at the beginning of each year, I pick 2 categories of my life that I want to go crazy on. And so this year it's family and focus. And then next year it'll be family and something else because family will always be
Always
on
be
there.
number one.
And that is 10 sentences about each one of those categories that I read 10 times a day. So it is deep level affirmation to solidify this in my mind because I only have a growth mindset. I do not backtrack. I live in a world of abundance, and little things like that will set you apart from everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So after I've done that, that's my morning. That's the first 3.5 hours of my day.
Okay.
It's all self.
I'm interjecting because
Yeah.
I this is top-notch morning routine stuff. Successful, happy, loving, giving people have a badass morning routine.
Yep.
Agreed.
And
100%.
it is so important. And when I get new people to come into my office who are depressed and sad and suicidal, the very, very first thing that I do is I say, you are giving yourself 1 hour every single day at minimum in the morning. I need you to get up a half hour earlier, and I need you to do these 4, 6 things. Pick, and they have to be done every single day for 6 weeks. And if you do this after 6 weeks and you come back and you're like, Matt, I'm still depressed, you would be the first. And because it's just so clutch. You're calibrating yourself for your life every morning when you wake up. And your morning routine is legit, dude. That might be the most intense
It's awesome.
morning routine I've ever heard.
I know, but you said a few, and I was like, I do that. I'm like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
I tell you what. So
327's pretty
327. Don't do that.
327, 327.
That's amazing.
Because that's exactly how much time I need. That's
Yes.
exactly how much time I need to write my notes, to do my morning nutrition, to get to the gym 10 minutes early so I can read.
You got to calculate it down.
What are
to
you
a
reading
minute.
right now?
I love it.
So I'm reading Ultimate Memory book. I'm reading. It's called Frequency. I can't remember who. Some gal wrote that, but this is kind of my spiritual book. Collective Energy, Neural Network,
And is
or
it
Spiritual
talks
Network.
about your frequencies?
Yeah, it's about
Ooh.
finding your home
Send
frequency
me
to
this
deal
book.
with
I'm on
problems.
this frequency
All
thing
that.
too.
And so I love the connective energy. And
Yep.
so Ultimate Memory, Frequency, and then Best Self. So I usually have 3 or 4 books going at a time. So I have some audiobooks, and then I have 2 that I'm reading.
I've been doing that for years.
Yeah.
I'm always reading at least 3 books.
Yeah.
I learned this a while ago. I can't remember where I learned it. I think it was John Maxwell, who's like some super duper awesome go-getter leadership guy. He was like, leaders are readers. And I was like,
100%.
Yeah. And 3 books, I'll always read 3 books. And a lot of times I'll reread a book that I really like. Like I've probably looped in Man's Search for Meaning.
So I read that every January. That is my favorite book.
so
That is
good.
I start the year.
That's your number one?
I start the year off every single year with Man's Search for Meaning.
Yep, it's my number one.
And 2 years ago, when I read it, I bawled. And
get
I
chills.
hadn't cried in it. That book changed my life. That book. I was in a very, very dark place, the darkest place I've ever been. And that book that saved my life. And I feel like part of me being on this earth was to give that book to as many people. And so I usually buy 10 copies at the beginning of the year. And when people are struggling, I give that book away.
Doing that.
I know that is.
Stealing
I
it.
know that is
Doing
really
that.
cool.
Yeah, there's not a more powerful book.
Yeah, that book
in this
should be
world.
life changing for everyone who reads it.
So, okay, where do I want to take this? Let's go to the dark thing, if you're cool with that.
Yeah,
What was
yeah.
going on where Man's Search for Meaning had to pull you out of a hole? What's
So I was lucky. I was trying to get back into college. So in 2003, after my first deployment, like right after my first deployment, October 17th, 2003, if I had to guess a date, I was in an auto accident. I got hit by a drunk driver and shattered the left side of my pelvis, and pretty devastating injury. And luckily it happened.
what year again? Sorry, I missed it.
Yeah.
This was 2003.
2003. So this is like
Were you
20
married
years
yet?
ago.
No,
you
not-
weren't,
not-
I was gonna say,
not
no,
married.
you weren't married yet. Okay.
Okay.
So I would have been 20,
Okay.
20 years old.
Wow.
So this is 20 years ago. You shatter your pelvis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fast forward to what year are we talking now?
So, I read Man's Search for Meaning right before my Iraq deployment.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And so at that point, I was still on a cane. So we're 2 years post
Yeah, I was gonna
accident,
say,
two and a
how
half
long was
years
the recovery?
post accident. And so I was in the ICU. Well, I was in the hospital for 29 days straight. And then I went home on bed rest. I could only get to a wheelchair to go to the bathroom. And so I was complete bed rest or wheelchair bound until, so this was from October, I think till February.
Damn.
I was
Wow.
completely bedridden.
And you were already signed up for the military at this point.
Yeah,
correct?
luckily, yeah, I wouldn't be able, with the injuries I have and everything.
They wouldn't let you.
They wouldn't have let
I wouldn't
you
be
in.
able to get in now. Yeah. And he was fine. He gets up and runs, and
Oh,
and luckily my girlfriend at the time was fine. I mean, pretty jarring. I mean,
Yeah.
Yes.
high speed accident like
yeah.
that.
But she wasn't in the hospital for
No,
29 days and stuff
no.
like that. Wow.
So yeah, the only major injuries were mine, and but Man's Search for Meaning, there was just this incredible connection with this, and you start realizing like, okay, so he would have this miserable life. And so you are here, you're suffering through this to give a great life to your son. And as me and my wife were struggling through the realization that our kid was not going to be typical, I read that and broke down. I'm like, this is the only reason we are here. This is the only reason we are here, is because if this child was born somewhere else, he wouldn't have such a loving family and such a great place to be.
That's so cool.
No, he does, man. He's a
does.
special kid, dude.
He really is.
Yeah. Yeah, you're a special dude, Clint.
Yeah,
That's powerful stuff.
No, that really is powerful. And
got me tearing up over here.
I
dude.
know, I am too. I'm like trying to collect
that's
myself.
powerful.
But it also, like, it goes to show too that, like, anyone can do this. You just have to be open. Like, and you were open and you learned. Like, I feel like you could have taken that accident and just been like, my life, you know, like, whatever, this is what I'm going to be. But like, you, like, look what you're doing today. It's just incredible. And it's all about your perspective. Right. And I really think that you took an opportunity to change it from the negative to the positive. Like, you were like, all right, well, this is what I have. What am I going to do with it?
Yeah, stop changing yourself, people.
Yeah.
That's what we do it all the time, dude.
We do, though.
You hear this, it's like almost a cliche at this point. I'm my own worst critic. Like, sure, but maybe you're your own best cheerleader. You know, like, we're so hard on ourselves. We're overly critical, and we misjudge ourselves and our capacity for greatness because of suffering. Because we think, well, if I'm suffering and this is painful, that means that something's going wrong. That is so backwards. If I'm suffering and things are going wrong, that just means that I got to learn something so that I can freaking suffer better next time, because it's only going to get worse, people. Sorry. That's the reality is, like, things are just going to get harder, and you can label that as worse, I guess, but it's going to get more difficult. You're going to get older and the pain's going to get worse. Like, your pain is not going to get better. It's just not.
No.
It can't. That defies the laws of nature, right? As you get older, things get harder. And the goal is to not just suffer well, but suffer well for a really good reason. Family, friends, humanity, a cause. And if you can do that and find something in yourself that propels you forward to suffer well for a cause, that pain is minuscule in comparison to what it is that you're experiencing.
No, it's almost a joy. It is. It really can be a joy. Not that I'd wish an injury like this onto anybody.
Maybe.
But no, but
I wish it, but like,
it tests your values, like you said. Like, you see when people's calendars where their values are at. Like, it's a big deal.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, and people, man, like, you don't know what's gonna happen. Bury a kid. I talk to people all the time that bury their children.
Yeah.
I mean, they go on. But what it comes right down to is, what are you going to do? How are you going to suffer well? Why are you going to suffer well? And that's Viktor Frankl's lesson.
Yeah.
It's why.
You're going to have
Why
a situation. You're going to have a situation where it's not going to be self-inflicted. There are so many people that have self-inflicted tragedies that beat them down.
Yes.
That they can't get through it.
Crippled by it.
Like, this is your fault. Like, imagine coming up to something. Imagine a kid with leukemia, right? That is not your fault. Like, you're struggling to get through life because you didn't practice suffering at all, because you didn't work out, because you didn't read a book. That's why you're struggling through life, because you don't have these tools. And I remember when we got the word that our son was diagnosed with Down syndrome. Like, that's hard. That's hard to deal with.
Oh, for sure.
How unexpected was that, right? Like, out of nowhere, you have this kid coming and it's this beautiful, wonderful, amazing thing. And then all of a sudden you get this news and it's so unexpected. It's a surprise, and it's not bad news, but it's just out of nowhere. And you're like, okay, what do I do with this?
Well, we had fertility issues, right? And so you try and you try and you try, and then you finally pay a doctor and you get pregnant, and this happens, and you're like, oh, the universe was telling us something that we didn't listen to. Like, why didn't we take this? And then you get dark. And then you have dark thoughts. And anybody that's got a kid that's been through this understands that they have dark thoughts, that you have cognitive dissonance, thoughts that, and this was something for me to grips with as I had these thoughts. I was like, man, I used to think I was a stand-up guy. and I would handle the situation great, and maybe I didn't, and then my wife goes into this deep depression, like, and doesn't get out of bed for 4 days. And
it's so overwhelming.
Oh yeah.
we
Can I even do this? Like, what are the thoughts? What's the thinking at the time?
So I remember flat out telling my wife the right thing to say, because I knew the right thing to say,
right.
But at that time I didn't believe it 100%. And so, we get kind of the news that this is happening, and that our kid will have Down syndrome and all that comes with that. And, I said what every friend says to somebody in this situation: oh, God only gives what you can handle.
Right.
Like, we were chosen for this, trying to comfort my wife,
Yeah.
knowing I didn't believe it.
Yeah.
Knowing, and I've since apologized. I'm like, I lied to you to try to make you feel better. I didn't know what to do.
That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But can you imagine if you were honest? What you said? Just kidding. But what like if you would mind like sharing like what were some of those thoughts that weren't yours, right? That's not the self, but the mind comes up with these thoughts of like inadequacy, or what was it?
So I mean, obviously, like, we had made a wrong choice.
Oh, okay.
That we shouldn't have tried to have another kid. And then you think about abortion, and that was never on the table for us. And you break down, your moral fiber kind of breaks down a little bit, and you're like, I thought when this situation came up, I was going to be that stand-up guy that was going to be so accepting of this child, and this is day 2, and we're crying over this child. Like, how are we treating this child like a mistake when I knew just 2 weeks ago I would have handled this situation great, and I didn't. Right? That is
Talk about a trial, man.
That is that's a non-self-inflicted tragedy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That really tests you. And so if you don't have the resolve to get through your self-inflicted tragedies, imagine going through that. And there was so much that stemmed from that. Like, it took us a long time to get grips of things and to start paying attention to our other kids. I mean, God bless my other kid. He lost a tooth at that time, and he came to me the next morning like, oh, the tooth fairy forgot, and I'm like, oh,
I've done that.
And then
I wasn't in the same situation as you, bro. I've done that.
But my kid came to me. It was like 9:00 at night, and he said, hey, Dad, can we have some food? We haven't eaten today. And me and my wife kind of realized nobody in the house had eaten at all.
The entitlement.
And I
man.
think somewhere we all started reading the wrong books, or the wrong message got sent out there, that it's okay to have a dad bod. It's okay to unwind, to get your time and not serve because you are the provider. And or many people say, well, I would rather be a good businessman than have a good body, or I'd rather be a good dad than have a good body. And it's just like, hey, what rule book are you guys reading?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, you can actually have it all if you just plan it out.
Yeah.
If you have the discipline, if you have that. And so this is kind of a group for men. So we do all the fitness and nutrition coaching, but once a week we all get together and talk. And we talk about mindset. We talk about sedation. We do marriage mastery. We do financial mastery, things that we all need. But then all of a sudden we have a little time at the end, and we have people that raise their hand and say, hey, I can't stop looking at pornography. And then all of a sudden other hands get raised.
Yeah.
Like, this is how I'm dealing with that. This is how I'm dealing with that.
Okay.
And
cool.
and men just haven't had this outlet
No.
because it's tough. It's tough to bring this up to your wife.
Mhm.
You know, it's like, hey, I'm not the man you think I am. You
Yeah.
know? And
Right.
now ultimately we want people to be authentic and honest. And if they slip up, to bring that up with their wife, because what I have found through my self-improvement journey, that my wife actually knows me emotionally better than I know myself. and she knows when I'm overdriving. She knows the things I need to do. And so the whole point is to open that conduit to the most important part of your life, which is your family. You've got to do that through the mind. You got to do that through the body. And you got to do that through the spirit, whether it is your belief in God, which is a thing, whether it's your belief in a collective energy, which tends to be what I believe. I believe that we have a vibration that we feed off each other, but it could be just as simple as your conscience.
Yeah.
You know what? And if you're talking to your conscience and you're praying, and I'm hitting the collective energy, who's to say we're not doing the same thing?
Totally agree.
You know?
It's so
love that.
true. So how do people, if they want to like get a part of this men's group, like how would they go about doing that?
So, you know, we're on all the socials. So it's at the Father Forge, and then thefatherforge.com. And we post some tips and stuff on the Instagram, and that's kind of an open forum like that. Or Clint.Markland on all the rest of the social medias. But that's how you hit us up. And it's a non-obligational thing. Yes, it's a coaching thing. It is a business. But we've got one rule, is that we will always provide more in value than we ever take in payment. And so we are not, I'm at a point in my life I actually don't need to do this.
Yeah.
It says, as I transition out of the military, it's how can I serve?
I was going to say serve, because you are just serve, man. It's
Yeah, you're the
awesome.
server.
It's so awesome.
Well, and we just need more stuff like this, especially for men, right? Like I do so many men's groups, and just get these dudes in a room, sitting down, talking about feelings and emotions, and it's magic. It's powerful. It'll change
amazing.
you forever.
It really is. I mean, we have had, aside from people like losing incredible amounts of weight, we've had men that are connecting with their wives for the first time. We have men that are having sex with their wives for the first time in months.
Wow.
Awesome.
We have these incredible weird kids, and it's finding these little things. It's finding like, okay, now that you're in control of you, now that you can control what comes in your mouth, you can control what goes out of your mouth.
Yeah,
You
it's
know?
so true,
That is
man.
so true.
So
Well,
true.
and what I love about that too is, you know, I'll be the first to admit, as wife, when Matt starts doing something and I start seeing him benefit from it, I'm like, hey,
You
like,
level up together.
Yeah,
You
I'm
level
like,
up together.
And vice versa.
I'm gonna take cold showers without telling him, and then if I like him, I'll tell him that it works.
Yeah, it's true. So true. Well,
Yeah.
and that's the goal, right? Like it's the collective is greater than the individual, and my contribution to the collective makes the individual better. Like that's what we're trying to do. And I appreciate the hell out of you, man. That was really, really amazing. And I hope you guys check out the Father Forge on all the socials. And Clint, man, can't thank you enough.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this was great.
Yeah,
Thank
this
you.
was
Thank you
awesome.
for having
The only
me.
last question I have for
Yeah.
you though
one
is,
more.
what time do you go to bed if you get up at 3:27 in the
So
morning?
if
That's it. That's all I want to know.
so if now my wife does handle most of the kids going to bed, but I do not go to bed until the kids are asleep,
Yeah.
because if I'm leaving my wife to do the job, what's the point?
Yeah.
Right.
She does tend to wrestle in bed, but you know, we're in bed between 8:30 and 9:30. So I have a threshold of about 5.5 to 6 hours. If I'm doing the 5 hours of sleep for multiple days in a row, I check in with my wife and I say, am I overdriving? And she says yes. and then
Awesome.
I plan a little bit more sleep.
That's awesome.
She's in
6.
charge.
I love
That's
it.
great.
I can
That's
maybe do
great.
that. I go to bed at 9:30. No, just kidding. I'm not gonna do that.
6, man. You got to get 6.
Yeah.
6 is the magic number.
Well,
Anyways,
awesome. Thank
thanks,
you
brother.
so much, Clint.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you.